This is how the human mind works. When you're walking through a forest, you don't think too much. You just let the silence surround you. Feel the soft breeze and the branches crack under your feet. It's in our nature to yearn for such scenery. No matter how much we thrive in busy, concrete-soaked cities, forests are always welcoming and refreshing to us. The air is clear and crisp, and daylight plays hide-and-seek through the tall branches. It's inspiring and beautiful. Sometimes, though, as you walk on your path, your mind begins to focus on small things, noises, gusts of wind, shadows stretching between the trees. Such silence can be both welcoming and unsettling, depending entirely on how you view it. Forests are double-sided coins. They hide you away from the tiring city landscape, but expose you to an entirely different, indifferent environment. You're not in control anymore, because this is not your home. You can lie to yourself and build a house there, but you don't truly belong in a forest. You're merely a visitor. That's national parks for you, an illusion of being in control, the fake freedom you feel on marked paths. But even the silence around you is a lie. Visit a forest again, even when it feels silent. Is it really? It's not. Complete, absolute silence means death. Fear it. My father taught me that. He's a park ranger, and he's been doing this job since forever. I wasn't much of a fan of national parks, especially because most of the time there's no service and the hikes are brutal. I'd rather enjoy nature by swimming in a lake or skiing down a resort. Why break your legs climbing a high point just to stare at another random valley? Not to mention the wildlife and the insects that always got on my nerves. I never understood his love for the forest. I guess that was one of the reasons why he started telling me scary stories from his night shifts. Looking back, they were obviously made up, but to my younger self, they felt terrifyingly real. I used to think he was so brave for working the dark alone. As I got older, I got into horror. Even if I didn't believe in his forest creatures anymore, I still liked the idea of spending the night in a small cabin in the middle of nowhere for that quick hit of adrenaline. So when my father said he wanted to take me with him on a shift, I accepted immediately. I knew why he offered. Over the past few years, our relationship had taken a massive hit. I was growing up, and he didn't know how to handle it. He'd become emotionally distant and seemed to repel any of my attempts to open up. In return, I'd become uninterested and irritable. In the words of my mother, this trip was supposed to be our way to bridge the gap. We arrived at the park around 9 p.m. His shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. His Jeep pierced through the darkness, venturing deep into the unpaved woods, the headlights flashing against towering trunks, turning them ghostly white against the black sky. I'd never been on this route, but then again, my visits to the park were rare. We drove for over an hour and a half before I finally saw it. A single trace of humanity in the middle of nowhere. A tiny wooden watchtower cabin with flickering light bulbs and barking watchdogs. Before we got out of the car, my father stopped me. Listen, there's some instructions you need to follow here. I know it might seem unimportant, but they're crucial. He handed me a piece of paper, a list of handwritten rules. At first, they looked like standard backcountry guidelines, but as I read down the page, a cold knot formed in my stomach. Rule number 6 changed everything. Don't go out alone in the park. Always have a working contact device. Don't leave marked paths unless instructed to and/or with proper equipment. Don't leave food out and lock the trash bins. Always keep on the whistle and the badge. If you see a man without an arm, don't help him. Your family is not in here, remember. There is no reason for you to hear their voices from outside. Lock your car doors, even when you are driving. Check the marks on the trees. There's only 3 types of marks, all triangles: red, yellow, and green. Other marks are not ours. Don't follow them. If the whistling is near you, it means they're far. If it's far away, it means they're near. Beware of dead blue. What is dead blue? I asked, looking up from the paper. My father sighed, staring at the steering wheel. You know when you're out in the woods and you think it's silent, but you realize there's dozens of sounds around you. Birds, crickets, leaves rustling? Yeah, that's because there's no such thing as absolute silence. Never. There's always sound, movement, life. Dead blue is complete and utter silence. Death-inducing, unnatural silence. Right. And when that happens, it won't. But if it does, he paused. His eyes darted from mine to the window behind me. You leave.
The cabin inside was dusty and cramped. He had a small desk, a mini fridge, and a TV that didn't work. We spent the first few hours talking, joking about the ridiculousness of the rules. Dad even tossed me my favorite brand of orange juice, reminding me that despite everything, he still paid attention. When he dimmed the lights, the forest outside became a vivid wall of darkness. The cabin sat on a steep hill, propped up against a massive tree, accessible only by a trapdoor and a rope ladder leading down to our parked Jeep. Around midnight, exhaustion took over, and I dozed off with my head resting on the desk. Dad woke me up abruptly. "I got a call from Martin," he muttered, reaching for his jacket. "The other ranger in this sector. He says a camper is missing from the grounds. We need to go search for him." "We? As in us?" "Yeah, you'll stay in the car back seat." He was already on his radio. I could hear Martin's muffled voice crackling through the speaker. "Wait, don't take the kid." "Why not?" "He'll stay in the car," Dad argued. "Paul, it could be one of those nights. We won't get out of the car." "You can't guarantee that." "Well, I can't leave him here alone in the dark." A tense pause followed. Martin relented. "Look, Paul, leave him in the cabin. Lock it down." Dad sighed, looking back at me with a conflicted expression. "Martin is coming to pick me up. You are staying right here, locked inside. Turn the lights completely off and wait for me to return. It's going to take half an hour max. You'll be safe here." "What? I'm not staying here alone." "It doesn't matter. I'll return soon." Reluctantly, terrified of showing my fear, I agreed. I watched through the window as Martin's car arrived, picked up my dad, and vanished into the pitch-black night. Silence followed. Heavy, oppressive silence. At around 2 a.m., I heard a sharp knock on the trapdoor beneath the cabin. My chest tightened. Another knock followed. I wanted to call out, but my throat locked up. Then, I heard my dad's voice echoing up through the wood. "Kev, open up. It's freezing out here." I froze. My eyes darted to the window, then back down. "Kev, please open. I know you're there. I saw you at the window." Panic setting in, I immediately killed the remaining desk light, plunging the room into absolute blackness. "You don't have a key?" I called out, my voice shaking. "It locks from the inside," the voice replied instantly. "How was it? Did you find the missing camper?" "Yeah, we did. He was drunk. We helped him back to his friends." As I spoke to him, my blood ran cold. I hadn't heard anyone climb the rope ladder. I hadn't seen Martin's headlights pull back up to the cabin. "How did you get back here without Martin?" I asked. "What do you mean? Open up, Kev. I'm freezing." "Answer the question." "He drove me here. I didn't see any headlights. They were off, to not draw the attention of animals." Bullshit. With trembling hands, I pulled out the crumpled rule paper in the dark and read Rule 6 again. "Your family is not in here. Remember, there is no reason for you to hear their voices from outside." My phone shook violently as I pulled up my contacts and dialed my dad's direct cell number. The phone rang. Yet from directly beneath the trapdoor, no phone speaker chimed. My dad picked up on the other end. "Anything okay?" he whispered. In the blinding darkness of the cabin, I brought the phone to my ear and whispered back, "Dad, someone outside is pretending to be you." A long, chilling pause. When he spoke, his voice was trembling. "Don't open the door. Did you turn off the lights?" I turned them off just now." "No, you should have turned them off when I left. Did you talk to it?" Guilt hit me like a physical blow. "I did. God damn it. Stay put. I'm coming back for you." "Kev, please open, please. It's cold." The voice below kept repeating, growing desperate, morphing into a hollow, jagged replication of my father's tone. Then, heavy thuds hit the exterior wall. Footsteps scrambled across the wooden roof. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stifle my sobs. And then, a face appeared at the window. It was my dad, but the cabin was propped 10 meters high in a tree. He couldn't possibly be standing at the window. The entity stared straight at me through the glass. Blood slowly dripped from one of its nostrils. My phone buzzed in my hand with an incoming call. It was my real dad. "Kevin, are you there? Are you in the cabin?" "Yes, and the thing looks like you, and it's staring right at me through the window. I'm coming right now. Martin's with me, we're almost there." True to his word, a few minutes later, Martin's headlights cut through the trees. The creature at the window tilted its head, opened its jaw impossibly wide, used its long fingers to violently pull the corners of its mouth upward into a grotesque smile, and leapt backward into the black abyss of the forest. Gunshots echoed through the trees. After a few agonizing minutes of silence, my phone rang again. "I'm coming to get you," my dad said. I threw open the trapdoor, climbed down, and threw my arms around him. "Let's go home, please, let's just go home." "We are," he whispered, holding me tight. We sprinted toward the Jeep. But as I pulled open the driver's side door and climbed in, my blood completely froze. It wasn't something I saw. It was the absence of everything. The wind had died. The crickets had stopped. The distant rustle of the canopy was entirely gone. Dead blue. Complete, unnatural, suffocating silence. Panic overriding all logic. I slammed the car doors locked. Standing right in front of the headlights was my father, looking at me with absolute confusion. At that exact second, my phone buzzed with a text message. I didn't look at who sent it. I just slammed my foot down on the gas. The Jeep surged forward, barreling directly into the figure standing in the beam of the headlights. I didn't stop. I turned the vehicle around, tears blinding my vision, and sped away down the dark mountain trail, praying I wouldn't crash. When I finally reached the park checkpoint gate, I slammed on the brakes. Martin's car was already parked there. The door opened, and Martin stepped out, entirely alone. "Where's my dad?" I screamed, stumbling out of the car. Martin looked at me, pale. "He took an ATV to get to you faster. He texted me to turn around and meet you here at the checkpoint." My hand shook as I pulled out my phone and looked at the text message I had ignored while fleeing. Martin and I split up. He may get there faster than me, and if he does, he'll text me to turn and head to the checkpoint. There is no one with Martin. He's alone. I hadn't opened the trap door to my real dad. He had taken the ATV straight to the checkpoint. The thing I had run over in the woods wasn't him, and I had known it the second the absolute silence closed in around us. Nobody at the checkpoint has seen my father since. As I write this down, my hands won't stop shaking. I am terrified for him, but deep down, I know he's still out there in the dark, and I'm going back in to find him.
For 6 years, the boundary lines of national forests and protected wilderness were my office. Operating as a junior park ranger, I spent my days managing trail maintenance, assisting hikers, and enforcing conservation protocols. However, the uniform does not prepare you for what exists beyond the trail markers. A couple of years ago, I walked away from the service. The decision was not born of fatigue, but of suppression. When you witness anomalies that defy ecological science, phenomena categorized under administrative silence and departmental cover-ups, carrying those memories becomes an endurance test. What follows is an unvarnished account of my very first anomalous encounter as a junior ranger. It serves as an examination of the predatory unknowns operating within remote ecosystems, designed to challenge the comforting illusion that human infrastructure controls the wilderness. The call originated mid-morning, a civilian report of distressed vocalizations echoing from deep within the unmapped timber north of a heavily trafficked tourist corridor. To an experienced ranger, audio logs of distress in the backcountry require immediate triage. Standard operating procedure dictates treating such calls with professional skepticism. Mountain lions, puma concolor, frequently inhabit these ridges, and their territorial mating calls or distress growls mimic the pitch and timbre of a human female screaming in agony. As I prepared my pack and checked my radio frequencies, my chief stepped forward and announced his intention to accompany me. Group protocol rarely mandated a ranking supervisor for a standard noise complaint on a secondary trail. I initially dismissed his presence as routine supervisory oversight or an evaluation of my field progression. We set out under a canopy of dense pine, exchanging standard professional small talk. Midway through the ascent, the chief paused, adjusted his heavy-duty utility belt, and delivered a directive that would alter my survival calculus forever. Make sure you take even these small jobs seriously. You never know what you'll find out here. At the time, I filed the remark away as generic backcountry wisdom. In hindsight, it was an explicit warning issued by a man who already knew the exact classification of the entity operating within our sector. We intercepted the coordinates provided by the reporting party, veered off the established gravel path, and pushed north into the dense underbrush. The terrain here was rugged, characterized by steep granite outcroppings and thick fern beds that dampened footsteps. Initially, the auditory profile of the forest remained entirely normal. The rhythmic tapping of pileated woodpeckers against decaying birch trunks, the rustle of gray squirrels navigating the upper canopy, the distant, hollow screech that had triggered the initial emergency call, still sounding mechanically similar to a feline distress call, yet structurally distorted. We pressed forward for approximately 10 minutes, closing the distance to the source. Then, without warning, the environment underwent a catastrophic physiological shift. Imagine every sound in a massive forest evaporating in a fraction of a second, leaving behind a vacuum so absolute that your own heartbeat feels deafening. All ambient noise, wind rustle, bird song, insect hum, vanished instantaneously. The silence was not merely quiet, it was an active acoustic vacuum. I attempted to inhale and listen for my own respiration, but the auditory feedback loop was completely severed. My initial physiological assumption was acute inner ear barotrauma, or sudden pressure-induced deafness. I turned toward the chief to communicate the emergency, only to freeze. His expression mirrored my own terror, eyes wide, jaw locked, and posture rigid. However, his reaction lacked the pure confusion of a novice. It was the precise, practiced stillness of a veteran who recognized an established tactical threat profile. Before our cognitive processing units could synthesize the silence, a secondary sensory intrusion overrode our nervous systems. A low-frequency buzzing materialized, originating simultaneously from the environment and the deep recesses of the cranial cavity. The vibration bypassed our auditory canals and registered directly as physical pressure within the skeletal structure. My jaw joints ached, teeth throbbed as if undergoing aggressive mechanical drilling without anesthesia, and my visual field began to fracture into horizontal analog static. Simultaneously, the spatial geometry of the tree line distorted. Emerging from a cluster of ancient hemlocks approximately 7 meters dead ahead, a silhouette crystallized. A humanoid biped standing conservatively at 7 feet in height, possessing an emaciated, hyperextended frame. It absorbed ambient light, presenting as a matte, light-consuming void rather than a standard shadow. As my muscles tensed to execute the sprint, a heavy hand locked around my upper arm with vice-like pressure. The chief intercepted my momentum, physically redirecting my center of gravity, throwing his arm around my torso and clamping my arms to my sides to neutralize my fight or flight response. He did not run. Instead, he executed a controlled, rapid forward march, hauling my dead weight backward along the approach vector. Just as panic threatened to override my compliance, his voice cut through the intracranial buzzing, low, flat, and devoid of panic. Don't run, don't talk, don't look back, just keep walking. We executed a 10-minute retreat under conditions of extreme psychological duress. Behind us, the entity tracked our movement, verified by the persistent, skull-drilling neural frequency and low-frequency mechanical whine. The wet, rhythmic cadence of rapid multi-limb locomotion over decomposing forest litter. A low-register wailing frequency echoing just beyond our immediate perimeter. We maintained strict mechanical compliance. We did not run. We did not communicate. We refused the primal urge to look over our shoulders. Without warning, the pressure differential lifted. The acoustic vacuum collapsed, instantly restoring the ordinary sounds of the wind through the pines and the chatter of wildlife. The intracranial buzzing ceased, leaving behind a dull migraine and a profound sense of physiological shock. We broke back onto the main tourist trail near the base station. I was trembling uncontrollably, hyperventilating as the adrenaline crash set in. The chief released my arm, turned his back, and began walking toward the ranger station without acknowledging the metaphysical event we had just survived. I confronted him, demanding an explanation for the entity, the silence, and the pursuit. His response remains etched into my permanent memory. There are things in these woods that have been here longer than us that we can't explain or get rid of. If you don't think you can handle that, you should pack your bags now. He continued walking. I stayed on the job for years after that afternoon, seduced by the quiet mornings, the isolation, and the genuine conservation work. But that was a mistake. That first encounter was merely the baseline, an introductory briefing to horrors far more structurally complex and active within the deep timber. The woods do not care about your jurisdiction, your training, or your humanity. They operate on older rules, and those who patrol them learn too late that some boundaries are never meant to be crossed.
In search and rescue, you learn that people don't just get lost. Sometimes, the environment actively hides them. I spent 9 years working in the Appalachian chain, a mountain range so old that its peaks have eroded into jagged, heavily forested teeth. In the summer of 2024, a veteran backcountry tracker named David went missing. This wasn't a standard tourist who stepped off the trail. David knew these woods better than anyone. He carried a satellite beacon, a radio, and a survival pack. When his beacon sent a brief SOS and then went completely dark near a region known as the Whispering Ridge, a full-scale operation was launched. By day 3 of the search, I was paired with an old-timer named Marcus. We were assigned to the deep valley just below the ridge, a place where the canopy was so thick that daylight barely reached the forest floor. As we hiked deeper into the valley, the first thing I noticed was the absolute absence of life. No birds singing, no insects buzzing, no squirrels jumping through the brush. The air felt heavy, tasting faintly like copper, like a thunderstorm was about to hit, even though the sky above was perfectly blue. Around 3 p.m., Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. He pointed to a massive oak tree. Nailed to the bark, about 10 feet up, was David's tactical backpack. It hadn't been dropped. It had been meticulously sliced open down the center, its contents completely emptied, and then hammered into the wood with heavy iron railroad spikes. "We need to turn back," Marcus whispered, his face turning an ashen gray. "Now." "We can't," I argued, looking at the tracking data. David's coordinates were less than a mile from here. "We're close." Before Marcus could answer, a voice drifted through the trees. It sounded like David. It was faint, raspy, and filled with pain. "Help! I'm down in the ravine. Broke my leg. Please." I unholstered my radio to call it into base, but Marcus grabbed my wrist with an incredibly tight grip. "Don't use the radio, and don't answer him," he warned. "Marcus, that's David. He's hurt," I hissed, trying to pull away. "Listen to it closely, kid," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "Really listen." I stood perfectly still and focused on the voice echoing through the hollow. David's voice cried out again. "Help! I'm down in the ravine. Broke my leg. Please." The hair on my arm stood up. Marcus was right. The voice was a perfect, identical loop. Every breath, every crack in the throat, every inflection was exactly the same, down to the millisecond. It wasn't a man crying out in real time. It was like a biological tape recorder, playing a phrase on a continuous, seamless cycle. Suddenly, the voice shifted locations. It didn't fade out and move. It instantly emanated from a thicket 50 yards to our left. "Help! I'm down in the ravine!" Then, from the ridge above us, "Help! I'm down in the ravine!" Then, from the dark woods directly behind us, barely 10 feet away. Marcus didn't say another word. He grabbed the collar of my vest and hauled me backward, forcing us into a frantic retreat. As we sprinted back down the trail, the voice began to distort. The words stopped making sense. The syllables stretched out into long, metallic screeches, mimicking the sound of tearing metal and snapping bone.
but still retaining David's basic vocal pitch. We ran for 2 miles until we broke through the valley line and reached the sunny, crowded base camp. We told the incident commander what we heard. They called off the ground search that evening, citing hazardous terrain. 2 weeks later, a state police helicopter spotted David's body from the air. He was found at the very top of Whispering Ridge, inside a deep, inaccessible rock crevice. The medical examiner's report was never made public, but a friend of mine in the department leaked one detail to me. David hadn't died from a fall or exposure. His official cause of death was listed as asphyxiation, but his lungs weren't filled with fluid or smoke. They were completely packed tight with dry, dead pine needles, pushed so far down his throat that it would have required immense external force to put them there. Whatever is living in those valleys, it doesn't just hunt for meat, it hunts for voices. And once it copies yours, it uses it to bring your friends into the dark. When I accepted the position as a seasonal fire lookout in the deep wilderness of northern Maine, I expected long stretches of boredom, breathtaking sunrises, and a lot of reading. The ranger station handed me a standard issue manual on fire safety, weather tracking, and emergency radio frequencies. But slipped inside the back cover was a single, laminated sheet of yellow paper titled Supplemental Procedures for Tower 7. There were 3 rules on that sheet. If you hear a knocks on the hatch door after 10 p.m., do not answer. Check the wood storage under the tower via the floor viewport instead. If the tree line appears to be closer to the tower base than it was during the day, do not look out the northern windows until sunrise. If a ranger named Miller calls over the radio asking for a head count, respond with, "All units accounted for," even if you are entirely alone. I laughed it off as a hazing ritual for rookies. Tower 7 was a wooden structure built on 40-foot stilts, situated on a high ridge overlooking a sea of endless pine trees. For the first 3 weeks, it was paradise. The only living things I saw were deer, the occasional moose, and eagles soaring past my windows. Then came the night of November 12th. A heavy, dense fog rolled into the valley just before sunset, swallowing the trees until the tower felt like an island floating in a sea of gray milk. By 9:30 p.m., the wind died down to an absolute, suffocating silence. At exactly 10:14 p.m., a loud, sharp knock echoed from the floor hatch. Bam! 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 My heart jumped into my throat. The hatch led straight down to a vertical steel ladder. To knock on it, someone had to climb 40 feet up the tower in pitch blackness, through a fog so thick you couldn't see your own hand. I opened my mouth to shout, "Who's there?" but stopped. Rule number 1 flashed in my mind. I walked over to the small plexiglass viewport built into the floorboards, which looked directly down into the clearing below. I turned on the exterior spotlight. Peering through the glass, I didn't see a stranded hiker. I saw the woodpile, but sitting on top of the chopped logs was a person. They were wearing a faded, vintage Forest Service uniform from the 1970s. Their back was turned to me, but their body was twitching violently, their shoulders jerking up and down in a rhythmic, mechanical motion. Suddenly, the knocking started again, right beneath my feet. Bam! 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 But the person on the woodpile hadn't moved. They were still 40 feet below me. Whoever, or whatever, was knocking on my hatch wasn't the entity sitting by the woodpile. There were 2 of them. Before I could process the panic, my radio crackled to life on the desk. The static was deafening, slicing through the quiet room. "Tower 7, this is Ranger Miller at the base station," a voice said. It sounded distant, hollow, and warped, like a tape recording played underwater. "We have a report of a lost hiker in your sector. Can I get a head count of everyone currently in the tower?" I stumbled over to the desk, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the microphone. I was terrified. I wanted to scream for help. I wanted to tell Miller that something was on my ladder,
and something else was in my wood yard. But I looked at the yellow sheet of paper. I keyed the mic. "Base station, this is Tower 7. All units accounted for." The radio went completely silent for 5 agonizing seconds. Then, the voice replied. But it wasn't Miller's voice anymore. It was my own voice, played back to me with a sickening, mocking tone. "All units accounted for." Right outside the window, a massive shadow shifted in the fog. I turned my head toward the northern windows and realized with horror that the massive pine trees, which usually stood 50 yards away from the tower base, were now scraping their upper branches directly against the glass. The forest had moved. I remembered rule number 2. I slammed my eyes shut, dropped to the floor, and pulled my jacket over my head. For the next 7 hours, I lay on the floorboards. I listened to the branches clawing at the glass, the wet thudding of something heavy pacing the exterior catwalk, and the radio repeatedly broadcasting my own voice laughing in the dark. When the sun finally rose, the fog cleared. The tree line was back in its proper place, 50 yards away. The radio was dead silent. I packed my gear, climbed down the ladder without looking back, and left my badge on the supervisor's desk. I haven't been back to a state park since,